Me, and I just wanted to encourage us all, particularly as King's Cross House of Prayer and Worship is new, and we're all new to one another, most of us anyway, is that we are stepping into the opportunity but also the challenge of leaving one era and beginning another. And what I mean by that, it's very easy to say, oh, we started a new year, we started a new decade, but this is something way, way bigger than that. Much, much more significant. In fact, it's so significant, we haven't really got a clue what we've stepped into. And as a result of that, we're going to have to be led by the Lord. The key thing I'm really going to share is that we've got to bring the wisdom of the past together with the marriage of the new that is yet to come, and keep them together. If we rely on the past, we're not going to be able to embrace the new era. But if we just try and ditch the past, we won't be able to embrace the new era either. We've really got to find this wisdom and revelation moving together. Now, Ephesians 1:17, I'm sure, it's one of the most famous prayer scriptures in really the worship and prayer movement. That says, Paul is obviously praying there for the Ephesians, that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give to you the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of him. And then it goes on in one verse, and it says in verse 18, I pray that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may comprehend the hope to which he has called you, which are the benefits of his glorious inheritance among the saints, verse 19, and what is the exceeding greatness of his power toward us who believe, according to the working of his mighty power. So obviously, as we start, or whatever the future holds in any sphere for us individually, collectively, in ministry, or whatever else in life, obviously, we want to know the hope, we want to know the calling, we want to know what God is doing and where he's taking us. But Paul is saying that the only way that we're going to be able to apprehend that is by engaging and receiving the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of God. And then we'll be able to, as our eyes are open more. But the way our eyes are opened, sometimes we feel that the way our eyes are opened is God's just going to show us things. And on one level, that's true. But it's also through the spirit of wisdom and revelation. It's not one or the other. And it's very easy to become dependent on one or the other. Wisdom is often gained a lot more through experience, what we've been through, what others have been through, etc., etc. Revelation is an unveiling, as the word literally means an unveiling, a laying bare. And so revelation is often more that sense of something we haven't seen before, we haven't apprehended before, comes alive and we see it. So we need the two together to really know God, to know what he's doing and how we are to follow, etc., etc. Matthew 13:52, I think Jesus put the point beautifully, very much in the context of a scribe who responds well to God. In that context he was speaking when he said in Matthew 13:52, then he said to them, therefore every scribe instructed concerning the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who brings out of his treasure things new and old. And it's both. It's not one or the other. And we're really going to need both to navigate the new era and to embrace everything. And that's really, really important to understand and to see. And let me just maybe put this point in as well. I haven't got the reference right to hand right now, but it's right at the end of Deuteronomy, right at the end of the books of Moses. It speaks in the last few verses there about how Moses laid his hands on Joshua, and it's in, hi Joshua, I laid his hands on Joshua, and what it says, and the spirit of wisdom came on Joshua. But it's interesting, it doesn't say the spirit of revelation, it says the spirit of wisdom came on Joshua. So Moses imparted to him, passed on his wisdom to him, that spirit of wisdom. But Joshua, when Joshua was facing the challenge of entering the promised land, What had Moses done in the past? He had had his staff. God said, stretch out that staff over the waters. So what Joshua didn't try and do, or didn't end up doing anyway, he didn't end up when he was supposed to cross the Jordan. Oh, now, what did Moses do? He got out his stick. So where's my stick? And there you are, the Jordan parts. How did the Jordan part? The priests were commanded to go down into the waters to carry the ark in, and the people were to stand back so they could watch what was happening and watch the thing and not to go near. And when the priests put their foot in the water, the Levites, etc., the waters parted, and that's how they passed over. So it was based on Moses bringing them up to the promised land, but the actual entrance in had a lot of new things to it and a different way of doing it. So it was consistent with the history, but it was fresh and new. And it's having those two together that's going to be absolutely crucial. Now, you could say to me, all right, why am I emphasizing this? You know why? I'm going to try and make this point, which is absolutely crucial at the heart of what God is raising up with a forerunner message, with houses of prayer and worship, and what he's trying to get across to us. And it's this: we need to have the end game in mind. The trouble is, what are you aiming for? What am I aiming for? Are you aiming for revival, or are you aiming for the return of Jesus? What is your goal? Revival is not the end game. Revival is the means to the end game. And this is something that the church actually needs its mind renewed on. If we're really going to be fully New Testament in our expression and in our understanding. Now, Jesus said he's not going to come again until this gospel has been preached as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. So the mission must be carried out and must be actioned for his return. But the end game, the goal, is Jesus' return. And in that, to the degree that we have not got that in focus, we are actually falling short of actually what the energy, the life, the target actually is. We're not fully there, often there. And so one of the things that I think we've really got to watch in Christianity generally is having an idealized view about the past. Now, I know what people mean by revival. What people mean by revival is they want to see lots of people saved, they want to see society changed, they want to see our churches full, things like that, want to see godly standards maintained, retained, reordered, etc. The nation come back to God. We use all these terms, etc. and that, which is all understandable. But I've always had this thing in mind. If it was so perfect in the past, how did we end up here? If we had it in the past, how did we end up here? The reality is there were many good things that happened in the past, but the seeds of corruption were also there, or things not being the way that they were. And we can argue about how people have a propensity to get religious rather than real, and so after the next generation, it all breaks down and all that. We can go through all that. But see, the point is, what we've often lost is the forward momentum. I would say, actually, a more New Testament term about what we should be aiming for than looking back to say what happened in Wesley's day, we want that again, would be we want to go on to fullness. The New Testament keeps on talking about fullness until we've reached the full measure. And if you imagine when you're filling up a cup, when it's halfway there, which maybe it was during John Wesley's time, it's way better than being down there, but it's not full. It's not full. And we want to go on to fullness. We want to go forward. And so we're in a different age, a different time, with different challenges, but with an eternal gospel that is still as relevant as it ever was. So what never changes is Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's as relevant as ever. He's as saving as ever. He's as true as ever. But there are many unique challenges we face. So we can't just look to the past for a repeat show. That's not actually going to cut it. And actually, it often makes us end up being religious in much of our thinking, praying, and things like that. And it's often the result of why many intercessors in the past have prayed for things that when they turn up, they actually turn against because it didn't come the way that they thought it would come. It didn't come the package they thought it would. We were asking you to do this, God, to break into our nation. Yeah, but we didn't expect that. No. So, we've had so many battles over this. Saying this silly it's a bit disrespectful. But so many people just got so offended by what happened through Toronto or other things like this or other moves, who were really, really faithful servants of God. But because what was being expressed was not in their thought form or their package, they could not receive it. They just rejected it out of hand. Tonight, where I'm going to the Capstone meeting, is going to be led by the KxHOPw worship team from London. And I love that house, and I love what they've built, and it's come out of that. I know I was transformed during that whole era. But I understand many people's sensibilities, concerns, etc. But so many people who would have been praying for God to break into the church in London, so many people could not face when that happened in that way. This hasn't come the way that I wanted, etc., etc. So that's a real danger we've got to watch about just having preconceived notions about what God turning up, doing stuff will look like. It's been a severe trap. Why we need to, at the beginning of the 2020s, really in particular, sharpen on this, is because we're moving into a new era. I actually believe that this decade we're moving into, maybe even this year, I've sort of said this to a few people, I wouldn't be surprised if 2020, really the 2020s, that's a better way of putting it, in a certain way, in a different way, and in its own unique way, will be almost like the 60s, in that we're going to have incredible upheaval and change happening on lots of different levels, and we're going to have so much more that happens in different ways to cope with. And unless we actually have the ability to discern the path well, we will either get shaken by a lot of things, or we will actually miss the opportunity that is afforded us in other things because we just can't see the open door. We're looking at this door when, God's saying, look, that door's wide open, walk through, will you? And no, we don't go to those doors. No, we're just over here. And that sort of expression can happen and be there. So just move along. Now, I'm not saying novelty, because I think one of the lessons that David had to learn is that when he was bringing the ark up to Jerusalem, wanted the presence right in the midst of Jerusalem after capturing it, the Canaanites had returned, the Philistines were up there, whoever had returned the ark to Israel on a cart, this oxen-drawn cart. And so, okay, that's how it came back to us. They did it. It seemed to work to get the ark back. We'll do the same thing. And obviously we know the story. They do the same thing. They bringing it up on this cart, stumbles. Uzzah stretches out his hand. That's it. He's toast. And he's gone. And David then takes the ark off, releases the ark to go to Obed-Edom, hears about all this blessing that's happened to Obed-Edom, his heart is stirred, and they confer it's time to bring it up, so they bring it up to Jerusalem, this time though with the Levites carrying the ark and bringing it up. And so what David had tried to do was something novel and disrespected the past. So we're not talking about that either, which is sort of, okay, forget the past, it's just a new thing. Doesn't matter what they did before in previous generations. It won't work today. out the window. Don't want to even look to them. Lord, just show us what to do. Lord, just teach us, open our eyes to whatever is new, whatever you're doing, whatever in that way. No, it's not that. It's not novelty, but it is new. It's not novelty, but it is new. It builds on the old and it goes through. Another way of looking at this, essentially, what is said about the Lord. Our God is the one who was and is to come. And there's that movement. Yeah, was and is to come. That's our Lord. And literally, a better tense of the Greek there about the come bit is coming. It's actually who was and is coming. And it's almost like that sort of threefold directional thing, there's stuff coming from the past, he's doing stuff today, and there's fresh stuff coming, and it's that that sense of our God approaching us from all those ways. What I want to let me just stay on the ear a bit, and then I'll just finish in a moment with one other angle I want to bring. Right, just about an end of an era and a beginning of a new era. What was said in Deuteronomy 34 and 10 and 11 says this, but since then, this is right at the end of the Torah, there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, in all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent to do in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh, before all his servants in all his land, and all that mighty power and all the great terror which Moses performed in the sight of Israel. Now, one of the key things I think we need to know about the era that's ended, we may just be stepping into a new one, and so much is to be determined by the Lord's leading about what that looks like. But one thing I'm convinced of is of this, that there's a sense in which that sort of Moses era, that individual, this amazing individual who seems to pioneer everything themselves and sort of break it themselves, that era has passed. And we really must be aware of that. Otherwise, the danger is, what we'll do is we'll just keep praying and praying for God, raise up the next this, raise up the next that, raise up the next that, and we won't be in tune with the era we're in. Now, I do believe God will all the way through, and until the Lord returns, he will raise up particular and specialized ministries with particular and specialized anointings. But what we need to understand is we are crossing from an era of, if you like, the unique individual to where God is obviously trying to say something fresh and new. And I'm not going to say try and put that two-step yet. It's very easy to say, oh, it's this or it's that. But we need to actually find that and discover that ourselves as we together seek the Lord. But if you see, Moses was this unique figure. It was said about him, nobody else has ever arisen like Moses in Israel since that time. Obviously, Jesus being the one rider on that. Now, what's really, really important to see in that is how is that reflected in wider society? What I did was I did a bit of a search, and I've drawn some of the most famous names. So there's so many other people who are included in this and could have made this list who I haven't included, because not everybody would necessarily just say, oh, I know them or whatever. But I looked up and spent a bit of time studying out people who passed away in the old era, if you like, between 2009 and 2019, as we came to the end of 2019. And it just absolutely did it for me that an era has ended and a new one has begun. So let me just name some of the people, maybe in the more kind of, I'll start first in, if you like, the sort of political business arena areas first. Some of the people who I noticed, just mentioned, who passed away between 2009, 2019, and listen to the type of caliber of person. Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali, excuse me, Stephen Hawking, Neil Armstrong, Steve Jobs, Maya Angelou. These were just some of the people I mentioned from that field. Think about Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali. These are unique, once in a lifetime figures who've gone. Okay, and you can obviously mention that. When you come to the music world, it's as clear, if not even clearer. It's quite remarkable, in fact, that particularly if you're musically minded in contemporary music, between 2009 and 2019, we saw the passing away of Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, George Michael, Prince. Just again about the calendar, why I'm stopping and mentioning Prince is, despite the fact I hated his stance on things, is where his songs and message of his music and that, I don't think sometimes people realise, because obviously people say Michael Jackson's up there, Whitney Houston's up there, if they like his music, George Michael they consider very significant. Prince, I would argue, is possibly the most talented guy there's ever been in contemporary music. If you read about what he did, not only did he sing very well, do all his outrageous stage stuff, but he played every single instrument on the first album he did. Played every instrument. In fact, somebody said that in one of his albums he played 27 instruments. The guy was just ridiculously gifted. So he passed away during that time. Amy Winehouse went, Lou Reed, David Bowie, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Aretha Franklin, B.B. King, Ginger Baker, if you know him from Cream. So again, these aren't just any people. Those people are outstanding in their era and that. There's never been probably a better soul singer than Aretha Franklin. You could argue that she's maybe been the greatest female vocalist in contemporary music. You could argue things like that. There's so many different people you can mention like that. So I hope you're seeing these aren't just any passings away, and it's all within this sort of decade period of 2009 to 2019. Let's move on to ministry. Same pattern again. I'm just going to quote a few. You could probably add to this list. Who have we lost during 2009, 2019? Somebody who's very dear to me, who actually died right at the beginning of the era, was Jill Austin. And if you don't know Jill Austin's ministry, she was an amazing woman of God, and I won't elaborate. But also, ones you're probably more familiar with. Steve Hill, obviously of the Brownsville Revival, if you know of that. Billy Graham, Bob Jones, John Paul Jackson, King Clement, Reinhard Bonnke. And every one of those ministries, they had a unique, and at Reinhard's memorial the other day, one guy from one Bible school said that as far as he's concerned, Reinhard was the greatest evangelist he knew of in Christian history. And so one of the most, how can I put it, unfair and also ill-judged things to do is to try and put on, say for instance, Daniel, who's coming after him, Daniel Colander, that he has to be the next Reinhard. He can receive the wisdom and the anointing and the inheritance, but he's got to move with the rest of the team into what they're now going into, because Reinhard is gone. Billy Graham has gone. John Paul Jackson has gone. They've passed on. Their era is over. Bob Jones, who affected so many lives, is gone. Just on this, KxHOPw, which has been almost like a forerunner ministry, not just in the forerunner ministry, but to the House of Prayer movement. They celebrated 20 years as a House of Prayer. They've been going night and day for 20 years in a Western nation, which is pretty amazing, actually. But so many of the key people that I know and love, for Corey, for instance, Corey now is actually with Upper Room. He's now on the leadership with Upper Room. But people, when you look on the live screen, because I know from right way back in the sort of early days, there's so many songs that IHOP have sung that we sing in the prayer movement, sing in the worship movement, that are in me, voices. You know, John Furlow recently was released to go into another area of ministry. John Furlow's songs, it's part of me, it's impossible to think of watching the IHOP live screen without hearing John Furlow sing. Because if you know a number of the IHOP songs, he's written a lot of them, and sings a lot of them, etc., etc. Misty Edwards, she's still connected, but she's actually more active in other areas. So you hardly ever see her doing the worship and prayer that they're doing. And then I could go through a whole number of names of the key people who are there. Alan Hood now is mainly based in Colorado. He's still on the leadership, whatever. There's been so many people who've, their time, that era has been over. But it's really, really important to see it. Make it one final point maybe on this about background.
Michelle, can you mute your sound, please? Can you mute your, because the noise is going on. Can you mute your volume? And you can unmute it whenever you want to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. The final one of just more outwardly is that you know, this is more of a jokey one or whatever, but just a few just before just after Christmas actually, it was probably, I went with my grandson to see what is it called, The Rise of Skywalker or whatever. So I went to see the Star Wars film, and you know, now I grew up with Star Wars, and I mean, you know, I can remember still vividly going to the first one when the franchise was so small, and just all of a sudden everybody was talking about this film everywhere, and it hit the media everywhere and was starting to take off. And I can remember right back to there, and it's like my life has been travelling with this storyline going on. And when I went to see it, he was asking me afterwards, what did you think? What did you think? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's good? I said my reaction was, I feel relieved, because the thing is actually done now. It's over. It's actually come to an end. It's actually finished. And so there was a sense of relief with that. That's the only way of saying it. But even that's coming, you know, and obviously for people who even cite Star Wars as their religion, basically that was an end of an era for them. It was an end of a whole saga. So there's that kind of changeover that's happening. Now, what I will say let me just try and add this as well, a bit of personal testimony. In 2018, as I think most of us know, my wife passed away, and we'd been married for 28 years. We had a very strong, very good marriage. And so 2018 to 2019, I've very much been in recovery mode, and there's still so much of that still going on in many ways. But I realised that what I've shared today, if she had passed in 2019, I wouldn't have been able to sit here today and to talk like this. But what I can do is sit here today and say, what I've shared with you is not just a concept, it's something I'm having to live. Oh. Because whether I like it or not, that to me, that was the best 28 years of my life. Mm. But whether I like it or not, that era is over. It's done. And it's not coming back. It's actually done. And I'm having to live in a new era with all the challenges that's faced with that. And so this shift, this kind of era shift I'm talking about, is that real. Reinhardt's not coming back. No. Billy Graham's not coming back. No. If you're into your music icons, Michael Jackson's not coming back. Muhammad Ali's not coming back. Nelson Mandela's not coming back. So we're into a new era. That has really gone. So where we're moving on to, I think just to finish with this final concept and idea. When David was on the way up to Jerusalem and really taking the land, the kingship and becoming all he was as a ruler. What really happened is that where he actually was crowned, and this is absolutely really, really important, where he was actually crowned king, where he really became king of the nation, was in Hebron. And it's really, really significant that it was in Hebron for a number of reasons. What was so significant about Hebron? Running through very quickly. Basically, all the patriarchs were buried there. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were buried at Hebron. Okay, apart from Rachel, who died in childbirth, so were the mothers, if you like, as well. You know, Rebecca, Sarah, and Leah were buried there as well. And so it's like the place of the fathers is in Hebron. And where David went to when things turned around, because remember when he was in Ziklag, again, we haven't got time to go through it, he was at an all-time low.
Yeah.
They lost everything there, but they recovered all. It was like an all-time low. You know, the men were even talking about stoning David and getting rid of him. It was that far gone. But the turnaround happened there. From Ziklag, he gained strength. People started rallying to him, and on he went to Hebron. And the Lord told him, as he started to gain strength and got his army going, and his mighty men were with him, and he started winning victory after victory, the Lord said, go to Hebron. Go to the place where the fathers were buried. He goes to Hebron. Hebron, in its name and meaning, it's often translated as association or kind of a college or friendship or whatever. It probably comes from the Hebrew word for friend. It's interesting, in Arabic, the name for Hebron is the friend. And of course, what was Abraham known as? The friend of God. So it was a place of friendship with God, but also friendship with one another. That's there. What happened at Hebron? Israel started to gather together to David at there. How did David lead them forward? Did he say, okay, I'm Saul number 2, right, okay? And so basically I'm more handsome than everybody, I'm higher than everybody, and basically as long as everybody serves me, we'll be fine, and everybody does what I want, we'll be fine. No. What David did was he consulted the people about what should we do. They came together with that sense. So when he actually started to go up to, obviously the leading of the Lord was the main thing. As he took Jerusalem, when it came to bringing the ark up, he consulted the elders, he consulted the people about, hey, do you think this is the thing we should do? So there was this sense of association, of together, that was there in David's earlier days. It's interesting, when he got into trouble, it's when he starts acting like a dictator. And basically everybody, just do what I say, I'm the king. I want that woman, give her to me, basically. And that's where he really got into hot water, when he just started to get a little too big for his boots, should we put it this way.